All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So tonight we're talking about the Pankey experience, and we're going to talk about our collectively our individual practice's value proposition. Most of you know my background already, so I won't spend much time on that. You've got my email there, so that if you want to ask a question or send me something afterwards, or ask for a copy of the slides, whatever you want, I'm happy to send that around. We'll have some time for questions at the end. I'm certainly on the Pankey faculty, as I have been for ever, it seems. I guess back in about 1990 or 91, I started doing that. Started on the Institute in 85. I do some lecturing, some teaching, and I lead a group for Smile Source, which gives us an opportunity to save a few dollars on our supply bill, materials, laboratories, and things like that. And they've got a little bit of an affiliation with Pankey, loosely organized, so that's kind of nice. I teach now at the University of Detroit Mercy. I teach dental sleep medicine, which is all I do now when I practice, 2 half days a week, only doing dental sleep medicine. And I also teach occlusion down there as well, which I used to do in my practice primarily. I was kind of occlusal TMD, chronic pain, facial pain, and some sleep. I just do the sleep now. So I'm going to probably give that up, the teaching down at U of D, just because they want me to always do occlusion as well. I'll just do sleep. I have a little consulting company called Functional Consulting. Don't email me or call me and ask me to do some consulting for your practice. I'm trying to wind that down. I'm 63, trying to slow down, trying to have more fun in life and stay home with the grandkids. So I'm not taking on any more clients unless they live within an hour's drive of the office. So if you want to move to Michigan, southeastern Michigan, I'm your guy. If not, I'll send you to Ricky Braswell or someone else that I think highly of. And then I lecture and teach for ProSomnus Sleep Technologies, which is a medical device manufacturer in California that I do some work for in terms of lecturing and teaching. Got some pretty cool devices. So we're going to talk about value proposition. What the heck does that mean, value proposition? And why is that important to a practice like yours or mine? So the definition, which is pretty obvious right there, is something that allows us to be different, something that allows us to stand out, something that makes us attractive to people. It's not something that's average, usual, common, or seen in all of our other competitors' products. At the Institute, we commonly do a different restaurant scenario where we ask early in the curriculum. We have our doctors take their teams to 3 different restaurants. It's usually something like a McDonald's and an Applebee's and something like a Morton's. And it's kind of fun because you get a little cheat sheet that you can fill out. Talk about how was your experience? You know, how were you greeted? Where did you park? How did you park? What did the menu look like? How did you order? How was the food? And if you had a chicken sandwich at McDonald's, you had a chicken sandwich at Applebee's and a chicken sandwich at Morton's, how long did it take? There were still chicken sandwiches, but how was it presented? How much did it cost? And all the different differences. And here's what I know, and here's what you know. Our patients understand the difference between a chicken sandwich at McDonald's, Applebee's, and Morton's. Drop the mic, leave the room. They know that the McDonald's chicken sandwich and a soda is going to cost about $5. At Applebee's, it's going to be 10. At Morton's, it's going to be 20. They know that at McDonald's, they're in and out in 20 minutes. Applebee's, they'll certainly be out in 45, so they can make it back for lunch if you're doing that on your lunch hour. But at Morton's, it might be an hour and a half. And the chicken is going to be good chicken at all 3. They're going to taste delicious, but the experience is going to be different. And our patients who come into our dental practices understand the difference between McDonald's, Applebee's, and Morton's, wait for it just a second, and what the chicken sandwich is going to be like. So their expectations, their wants, their needs, their desires about what a chicken sandwich is going to be like for them can be altered by the filter of where it's going to be presented. It's still a chicken sandwich, still got nutritional value, still got calories, but at McDonald's, Applebee's, and Morton's, it's clearly different. So a value proposition is really some sort of a montage, if you will, some sort of an overlay of all the different kinds of things that our brand promise brings to present to our customers. It's also easily defined by saying, what can we do differently that our competitors can't do and that our patients still want? So if we look at our customers or our prospects' needs and desires, and we look at what our competitors can do, and then we look at what we can do, and we say, how do they overlay? And somewhere right here in the center area is going to be an overlap that we would call our unique or differentiating value proposition. And it's kind of neat to find that, because that's the kind of thing we'd want to talk about. So if I was a dentist still practicing general dentistry in Rochester Hills, Michigan, I would say, what do I do differently? What do I do better? how do I tell the people who live in my area that there's an opportunity for them to get this here that they can't get anywhere else? Something that's unique, something that's different. And so my unique differentiating value proposition is going to be what my practice can provide to patients that they want, that they can't get anywhere else. Now that's really easy for us to talk about when it comes to the Pankey Institute, because the types of dentists who decide to go on a path of learning and education and a journey, if you will, a self-discovery growth experience at the Institute, have an opportunity to develop a certain set of skills, both behavioral and clinical, that make them different than the average dentist, different than most of the practices in their area. And that creates a unique or differentiating value proposition for them that patients want and they can't get somewhere else. That's really, really cool. So for a second, let's suspend that discussion, talking about your practice or my practice or any practice, and let's talk about something that we're familiar with, and not just restaurants or hotel chains or department stores, the kinds of things that we usually use as analogies for different kinds of brand promises and customer expectations and unmet needs and met needs and things that we can do very well. And let's look at the Institute itself. So here's Pankey, and here's other continuing education that's available. And here's dentists out there, 180,000 dentists in the US. And we really should talk globally, because the Institute has had dentists come from all over the world to study there. So what does Pankey offer that other CE doesn't? I mean, I could go to lots of fabulous places. I could go to Spear, I could go to Coyce, I could go to Dawson, and I could learn really the same sort of occlusal philosophy and treatment, the technical aspects of dentistry that I could learn other places. I could go to LVI and I could learn a neuromuscular approach, a physiologic kind of ramification to how we deal with occlusion. I could go lots of places. I could go to OBI. I could learn some nathology. I could learn occlusion really well in a lot of places, but there are things that we learn at Pankey that just aren't being taught other places. And so what is it that makes us unique? What is it that makes us differentiating and makes our value proposition attractive to everybody? No, but attractive to some of the dentists out there in that universe of dentistry that we talk about. Well, clearly this is what is so differentiating, is there was an individual, a very special individual, Dr. L.D. Pankey, who I had the pleasure of meeting and spending some time with in my E1 and my E2. He passed away shortly after my E3 in 1987. But he got up there and he talked about he talked about dentistry, but he also talked about a philosophy about life, a philosophy about how we should live our lives in a balanced approach, that love, work, worship, and play in a balanced relationship would help us achieve that attraction that we had about happiness. And it wasn't just happiness inside our practice. He recognized that Aristotle's principle of a balanced life applied to dentistry inside our practice as well. So Dr. Pankey was able to take this philosophical approach to life and apply it to a philosophical practice of dentistry, that if we knew ourselves, who we wanted to be, what we wanted to do, how we wanted to practice, what kind of procedures, what kind of a team, what kind of a patients we wanted to work with, all of that, if we could really come to know ourselves. And then we really took the time to know and understand and be in relationship with our patients. And then we really knew how to do excellent dentistry, really knew our work. And we applied that knowledge in a way that was predictable, consistent, and as a deliverable, that we would get rewards. And once again, in his genius, and his genius was not stealing great ideas from great philosophers like Aristotle. His genius was taking those philosophical principles of life and applying them to dentistry. So cool. So he said, our rewards, both spiritual and material, were important for us to have. See, it's not enough to make a lot of money being a dentist. Having enough money means I can pay my bills, I can have some really good stuff, but it's not enough. It doesn't bring me happiness inside. Those warm fuzzies we get when a patient sends us a nice note card or brings in cookies or caramels at the end of the year. it's marvelous when somebody shows their gratitude and appreciation about the dentistry that we did for them. Those warm fuzzies feel almost as good as the cash we get paid. Now, don't mishear me. We still need the cash, because if I can't pay my bills, I can't pay my team. And if your team comes in on a Friday to get their paycheck and you say, it was a great week, and they say, yes, it was. We did really well. We changed some lives. Oh, fantastic. And they say, where's our paycheck? And you said, bring it in for a group hug. That group hug is not going to pay their bills either. So we have to have this balance between not just inside of our practice and outside of our practice, but a balance between the warm fuzzies we get and the economic benefits we get in our practice. What a unique way to look at it. Oh, and by the way, I'm 63. My circumstances, my temperament, my objectives have changed. And so what's important to me today is different than what was important to me 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. And so I continue to evolve as a human being living on this planet and practicing dentistry. Today, I work 2 half-days a week doing dental sleep medicine. I lecture and teach. I travel, trying to stay home more, trying to be a better grandpa, because my kids are not, my grandkids especially, are not going to remember how much money I made or how much money I left them. They're not going to care. They're going to care how many times I took them to the water park, or how many times I sat down and read them a story and lay with them until they fell asleep, or rubbed their back if they had a stomach ache. That's the kind of stuff that's going to be meaningful to them. And I want to be there for that, because it feels so good. Now, it feels good to come down to the Institute and teach. It feels good to save lives doing dental sleep medicine. But I'm trying to find that balance between what's important to me and what's important to my profession. So there's no wrong answer. So what would you say about Pankey? How would you describe this unique value proposition of a continuing education institute to a friend? How would you describe Pankey to a friend? What would you say? Would you say it's the one place? Would you say it's unique? Why would you say it's unique? What would you say about it? What would you say that's different about that place down in Key Biscayne? Why is it different than Dawson or Spear or Coyce or their university's continuing education program or their state dental meeting? What's so different about Pankey? Why should somebody go there instead of fill in the blank? I love it. Somebody will come up to me after a lecture and I've said good things about Pankey, and they'll say, so, hey, I'm thinking about starting on a path and doing some stuff. Should I go to the Pankey Institute? And you'd think I would just say yes. And John Farber, if he's listening to this, would probably wish I would just say yes, because he's responsible for helping us pay our bills and get everybody down there at the Institute. But it's not what I say. And it's really not what John would want me to say. It's not what Lee Brady would want me to say. I would say, well, that depends. What are you looking for? Because if you're just looking for clinical education, there's lots of good places to get that. And we are one. We have great, incredible, best-in-class clinical education. But we also spend some time talking about the behavioral components of dentistry, about leadership, about communication, about management, about visioning, about developing a philosophy of how you want to practice dentistry. And if that's not something you want, maybe we're not the right place. So we're the one place where you can get that, but we're not the only place that you can get clinical education. So do you feel that difference, that tension that I would have internally of answering that question? Should you go to the Institute? Don't know. It depends. What are you looking for? Maybe it would help if I told somebody else how the Pankey Institute impacted or changed me, that it made me a better person. My wife would tell you that. My kids would tell you that. It made me a better dentist. It made me a better leader and manager in my practice. It made me a better communicator with my patients. It made me a lot better things than just a better clinical dentist. And I would argue, and perhaps you would argue, that the little line you've probably looked at the bottom of the screen might be a summary of how you might describe what a lot of Pankey dentists strive or hope to become. They want to become low volume, fee-for-service, relationship-based practitioners of comprehensive care. A lot of dentists want to do comprehensive care. Relationship-based, that's different. Fee-for-service, I want to get paid a fair fee for what I do. Low volume, well, that doesn't mean I don't have that doesn't mean I have inadequate volume. It means I can control my schedule, my time, my space. I can work on projects and things that I want to do and have the time to do that. So a low volume fee for service, relationship-based practice model for comprehensive care is a way that I like to think of describing the Pankey Institute to other people. Now, it turns out a few years ago, several years ago, we surveyed our Pankey doctors, and it was really kind of an interesting time because we'd had several surveys done by the American Dental Association that talked about how many patients they saw. You're seeing that in the data again, so many more patients just to stay even with the PPO reimbursements. But how many patients they were seeing, what kind of procedures they were doing, how busy they were, the kinds of stuff that was going on. And then you'd look at the Pankey database and you'd say, wait a minute, people who have been through the first 4 levels of the continuum who were doing dentistry out there on a day-to-day basis were doing things differently. They really did have a lower volume, fee-for-service, relationship-based practice that was comprehensive in nature. So 90% of the people in the survey said, we saw fewer patients. Oh, that kind of makes me nervous because maybe I'm not making as much money. Well, stay with me on this. Not only did they see fewer patients, but they also felt more fulfilled. And when I hear 95% fulfillment, I think to myself, the dentistry we do was making a difference in those people's lives. The dentistry we're doing felt good to do. Instead of fixing a tooth here and a tooth there, doing 2 cleanings and a crown every year because that's what insurance covers, I was able to do some more comprehensive care and spend some time working on their occlusion and getting their periodontal health in array and lining things up so that I could do more comprehensive care. That was very fulfilling to think that I was really helping these people keep their teeth the rest of their lifetime and not just patching up things and doing for them what they really wanted to do. That's always a challenging, if you will. That's always kind of challenging. So they also had more net profitability. So let me go back. Fewer patients, felt better to do. Oh, wait a minute. Felt better to do emotionally, felt better to do financially. So these practices, and the year that the data was encompassed, the average dental practice was doing about $700,000 a year, and the average Pankey practice was doing about $1 million a year. That's a significant difference in revenue stream, a significant difference in net operating income and net profits. If you're confused about some of the terms like net profit versus net operating income, you've got to take the Mastering Business Essentials course with Rich Green and Mark Clive. It's going to be awesome. Great stuff. They're going to show you some great data and great information and help you really understand the business side of dentistry. If you've missed that program in the past, it'll come around again. It's going to be wicked cool. But understanding the business side of dentistry, at the end of the day, I want to make better net profits. 2 types of net profits. 1, emotional, and 2, behavioral. 1, emotional, and 2, financial. I've got to make enough money so that I can pay my bills. And I've got to also make sure that I get enough warm fuzzies. So if you haven't had a chance to take that course, I think they've got some of it in 2020. Desi's just texting me and saying that it's sold out in 2020, so you're gonna have to sign up for 2021. That's talking about how popular a course it is because we didn't go to business school, we went to dental school. So understanding the business of the practice of dentistry and how we get to this point where we have better net profits, that's a pretty significant accompaniment of the philosophy of the practice. So I would say that if we looked at the Pankey Institute and you said, what is the Pankey Institute like? Well, it's the one place for what? The one place where we can get the right kind of emotional warm fuzzies that we need, the right kind of busyness that we want to have or not be too busy. I don't want to feel like I'm on roller skates. I don't want to have holes in my schedule either. A place where I feel fulfilled, a place where I get paid well financially as well as emotionally. It's the only place that teaches that. And I think that I always enjoy talking about the fact that this low volume fee for service relationship based model for comprehensive care, ... pause, is only available there because we're the only really nonprofit continuing education institute in dentistry. Everybody else is beholden to some other sort of a shareholder, whether it's a university, whether it's the investment capital company that owns Spear or John Coyce or the investment capital company that owns Dawson. No wrong answers. It doesn't make those bad things. I'm just saying that profitability in terms of dollars for them is the primary focus. For us, our profitability is measured in how successful we help dentists become. Our shareholders are our students. Our shareholders are the participants that get on a plane and fly to Key Biscayne and come down here to learn. So enough about this example. We're talking about the Pankey Institute. Let's talk about your practice. So my practice, your practice, our practice. This is called a Venn diagram. And a Venn diagram says, let's take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, usually not too many more than that, constructs and overlay them. And if we overlay them, there'll be some overlap. And where the overlap occurs, we can make some judgments and understand some considerations about the particular diagram. And in this case, I could say, what are the things that we do over here in this circle that we would call our practice? And some of the things are pretty common. Some of the things overlap here with what other dentists do. Some of the things in here overlap with what patients want. Some of the things back here are what patients need or don't know that they want. That's okay. And it's okay to have this kind of relationship. But right in here, there are some things that are unique to our practice that we do, that other dentists don't do, and that our patients want. Sometimes knowingly, consciously, and sometimes unconsciously, our patients want something out of dentistry or from dentistry or in a relationship with a dental practice or team or hygienist. And if we can provide those, we have a unique opportunity to relate to our patients in a way that other businesses can't. And so understanding that is critical. Being able to define that is so important. And then being able to find a way to communicate and talk about that is seminal to sharing our value proposition with our patients and our clients, our customers. So what does your practice do? What touchy-feely thing? What claims can you make? What is more convenient about your practice? What do you do differently as a clinical service or better? You know, what do you do that's different, better, differentiating, convenient than other practices do? You know, maybe it's as ridiculously simple as I'm open late hours. Maybe it's that I make exquisite provisionals. Maybe we run on time all the time. Maybe I do a more comprehensive and thorough, complete examination than any of my neighboring dentists around me. Maybe it's that I understand occlusion and I understand central relation and I understand airway management better than most of the other dentists around me. And which of those things do our patients really want? So which of those things do we do that other dentists don't do? Which of those things that we do are things that patients want, that they either know they want or that we can help them understand that they want? Because that's one of the challenges is sometimes patients don't know what they don't know. They don't think they want something. They think they want what we've taught them. And what we've taught them is you go to the dentist twice a year, you get your teeth cleaned, when something breaks down, we fix it, have a nice day. Oh, by the way, that'll be covered by your dental insurance. So I've taught patients years and years ago, 40 years ago, when I first graduated from dental school in 1981, so not quite 40 years ago, but darn close. We taught our patients to want, not what we know they need, to want what was covered by insurance. Because if we saw things that were broken down and we wanted to fix a couple, 3 teeth and crowns were $300 back then, $1,200 worth of insurance coverage was a big deal. Well, insurance isn't insurance. It's not a third party taking the risk for catastrophic loss. But we had a generation of dentists, myself included, in my early part of my career where we leaned on insurance as a crux or a crutch for what we couldn't do, which was share our value proposition with patients. It wasn't until 1985, 4 years out of dental school, and I went down to Pankey, that I learned there was an alternative path where I didn't have to succumb to what insurance covered or didn't cover, that I could choose to practice dentistry by doing my best stuff for people I liked, with people I liked, and everybody getting paid fairly. Paid fairly? Yeah. Full fee. Full fee? Yeah. Money and warm fuzzies. I needed some warm fuzzies and some cash. And it was a way for me to be able to get both of those that the Pankey Institute freed me up to be the best dentist that I could. So let's talk about what patients want and what patients don't want. Now, it turns out patients, I believe, really do want excellent dental oral health. They just don't know it. They don't know that it's their choice. They think, because we've taught them, that they should only do what's covered by insurance. How many times have we said, I've done this incredible exam and you need this, 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 and this. And the patient says, is that right? You answered it, covered by my insurance. And we say, no, your insurance sucks. It's really not insurance. Now we're beating up on their insurance and they think we're making excuses. It isn't until the patient really wants to have the healthiest mouth they can and they understand the different kinds of things that they've spent money on that we help them make better value clarification, value proposition, differentiating kinds of dental practice decisions that is in their own and their family's self-best interest. You see, patients understand the difference between McDonald's, Applebee's, Morton's. We've all had patients who came up to the front desk and said, nope, I just want to do what's covered by insurance. As they set their Louis Vuitton handbag on the counter, drop their Lexus keys on the counter, and if you look in their chart, they live at an address that you can't afford. It's incredible how patients have come to understand and appreciate and want other types of value propositions that have been presented to them. They want to eat at a nice restaurant. They want to carry a nice handbag. I want to play Pro V1 golf balls, even though at my level of play and a 14 handicap, I could probably play top flights. To those of you who are golfers out there, it would not make much difference in my score. We send kids to private schools. Why? Why would we take the entitlement we have of a great public school education, and right here where I live in Rochester, it's a national blue ribbon exemplary school. And why would I reach into my pocket, take money out, and pay for my kids to go to a private school? It's because I value that. I value that, and that's far more expensive than what just a little bit higher level of dentistry would be. We buy automobiles that make us feel good emotionally, automobiles that maybe have more characteristics and features and cost more. We could all argue that a good, safe, quality automobile could be purchased for $20,000 or $25,000, but people buy $30,000 and $50,000 and $70,000 and $100,000 automobiles. Why would we do that? Patients understand that 20,000 mile radials aren't going to last as long as 40 or 60,000 mile radials, and they're going to cost different amounts of money. And I could go on and on with different examples of different kinds of value propositions that our patients are accustomed to living with each and every day. Our patients don't know what they don't know. And if they don't know what they don't know, we can tell them. And if we tell them, some of them, many of them, not all of them, would understand that we are a different practice, that we provide something for them that they can't get anywhere else, that they really do want, that they didn't know that they wanted. And if we do that, maybe we don't have to be as reliant on PPOs or even indemnity insurance. Maybe we don't have to be participating with insurance companies at all. In the last 5 years, I've coached dozens of practices. Some of you who might even be listening on this webinar, and many of you that are Pankey practices, I've coached through going from either participating with PPOs to non-par PPO, or from participating with insurance altogether to becoming non-par. And never have we been able to do that and not moved ahead financially, not moved ahead emotionally. Everywhere from breaking even financially and yet getting rid of the participation agreement to sometimes 10 or 50 or 100 or once $300,000 further in advance in terms of net operating income for a practice that went non-par that we've seen before. But we have to be able to articulate those value proposition differences to our patients within our practice. Our team has to be comfortable with that. The team has to understand the difference between participation and not participation, whether it's PPOs or indemnity. So I can tell you that we worked once with a practice that was a microscope dentistry practice that really had some very unique ability to do kinds of dentistry that, quite honestly, I didn't even do. I didn't use microscopes. I used 3.5 power loops, but not scopes that were 8 and 10 power. And yet this practice was challenged when we talked to them about saying what was different and so much better about your practice, because they thought more dentists were using microscopes than really were. It's about 1%, maybe 2% of dental practices that are using microscopes at the 8 or 10x level. And so that's a huge differentiating practice. The kinds of exams that we do in our practice. It's so interesting when a patient would call and say, so I'd love to come in. I'm a new patient in the area. I'd love to come in and set up a cleaning and a re-care appointment I do for cleaning, stuff like that. And we'd say, oh, it's great to hear you to the area, but Dr. Murphy would love to first meet you, and you could interview him, and he'd love to do a very complete and thorough examination. And they'd say, well, would I get my teeth cleaned that day? And we'd say, well, no, they're used to a paradigm that said cleaning, exam, x-rays, boom, cleaning, exam, x-rays, boom, cleaning, exam. You get the idea. And when we said to them, well, we used to do it that way, but what we found is when new patients came in, sometimes they needed 30 minutes for cleaning and sometimes they needed 3 hours. We never knew, and it wasn't quite fair to treat everybody the same. So Dr. Murphy would love to do a complete and thorough examination first. You could determine what kind of cleaning you need, and we'll set you up with your hygiene visit, everything like that. That was refreshing to most patients to hear that we were going to treat them as an individual. We were going to design a treatment plan for them, even about their cleaning appointment, that was individualized and one-to-one, not cookie cutter and the same for every patient. We used to love in our practice running on time. It was the most stressful thing for me, is to not run on time. And so we had a scheduling system where if I thought I needed 45 or 50 minutes, I'd block an hour. If I needed 35 minutes, I'd block 40 or 45 or 50. I would just always block the amount of time plus a little bit so that I never felt rushed. I want to have time with the patient. I wanted to be de-stressed so I could do my best stuff. Now, did that mean I maybe had to charge 5 or 10% more for my filling or my crown or my cleaning? Yeah, my hygienist could schedule, 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 minutes, whatever time they needed, and we could charge appropriately for that. We like to run on time because when we ran behind, our patients didn't like it, we didn't like it, and it just created stress for everybody. But you have to have a system for that. In order to do that, I remember a time when a young boy, an 8-year-old, fell off a slide at school and broke his front tooth, and his mother called, rather hysterical. And we said, bring him right over. And right after we scheduled him to come right in, my office manager picked up the phone and called my next patient and said, Mr. Jones, yeah, are you still at home? Yes, I am. Oh, so glad I caught you there. Listen, Dr. Murphy has a patient coming over, a little boy, 8 years old, fell off the slide at school, broke his front tooth. We have no idea how long it's going to take. I'd like to give you the opportunity to reschedule your appointment so that you don't have to wait, because we don't know how long it'll be. Oh, patients love you for that. That's differentiating. When you make provisionals that look like teeth, when you make provisionals that can test the phonetics and the aesthetics and the occlusion, and you explain that to patients, they've never had that done before. Instead, they were told, don't eat on that, chew on the other side. You're going to probably catch food around it, it's going to come off. No, I wanted patients to eat and chew and talk and smile and live with those provisional restorations, because they were testing out the occlusion and the aesthetics and the phonetics that I was trying to work on. I wanted to polish, I'm going to date myself, polish old silver fillings, certainly polish composites, carve anatomy into them so they look like a tooth. And I would tell patients, humbly bragging, that, you see this filling here? This is the one we did today. Oh my gosh, it looks great. I can't even see it. I go, yeah, thanks. I go, we try to work hard at those. I go, you see this one over here? Yeah, that's an old filling you've had done. They go, yeah, that doesn't look the same. No, but honestly, if you'd have come into me 10 years ago, that's the kind of filling we might have done for you, that tooth color restoration. But what we have found is that if we do two things, we get some incredible benefits. If we first take the time to polish that restoration like that, we know that one thing will happen, it'll last much longer. And the second thing, if we carve those little grooves and nooks and crannies in it, it'll chew more like your tooth. So we can create a more replacement of your tooth value, and it'll last longer if we make it look more anatomical and we polish it up. That's huge, huge. I love to talk about how up in Canada, they separate the laboratory bill from the fee for the crown. So if you were to say to a patient, yeah, I'd love to get you back in and do that tooth for you, fix that tooth, we'd like to do a crown. They say, well, what's that going to cost? We'll say, The fee for the crown is going to be $1,100, but your laboratory fee for the restoration could be $150, $250, or $350. That's what they do. They separate the crown fee from the laboratory fee up in Canada. And if you said the crown fee is $1,100 and the lab fee is $150, $250, $350, most patients are going to say, what's the difference? Awesome. So the $150 laboratory fee will function. It'll be shaped like a tooth. It'll look okay. It'll fit well. It'll be very serviceable. It'll last maybe the rest of your lifetime as a long-term restoration. It'll be great. But the $250 crown is going to look a little bit more like a tooth. And the $350 crown, I'm pretty sure when we put it in, you won't be able to tell which one we worked on. It'll look like a natural tooth. Now, it's okay if a patient says, give me the $150 one and saves $200. That's fine. But they're probably not going to do that in the front. But see, it's different if we put that to the patient and we have the kind of conversation so the patient comes to understand that we use a different kind of dental laboratory, that we are trying to do our best stuff. And just the fact that we're on this webinar and that you've likely spent an incredible amount of time in education and training in your professional career, both as a clinical dentist and as a behavioral person, that's worth talking about. We used to have all on the brag wall on the wall, and it's still at the office today. I was there seeing sleep patients today at my old practice. They've got down the hallways you walk down, there's 3 dentists that are in the practice, and they've all been to the Pankey Institute. And they've all got all their E1, E2, and all of the certificates we get from the Institute hanging on the wall so that when the opportunity becomes available, they talk about the kinds of levels of continuing education that our dentists have had in our practice because it's different. We are like the doctors at the Mayo Clinic of dentistry. And we want to be able to have that kind of a conversation with patients so that they know what they don't know, that they know they're in a different practice, having different kinds of things done, different procedures, and that we run on time and we're friendly and we remember their name and whatever it might be to make them comfortable and confident in us. And if we do that well, we can probably charge a fair fee and we can probably have patients say yes to more of the dentistry that we want them to do. So developing, understanding, and owning your value proposition in dentistry is going to be a critical component to being successful. The good news for you is you're on a journey at the Pankey Institute, and being on that kind of a journey, you have so many differentiating characteristics that help make you and your practice and your team better. And communicating your value proposition and the things that are better about you and your practice and your team helps set the stage for your patients to understand the same kind of thing they do when they choose where they're going to go to dinner or what kind of a car they're going to buy or shoes or handbags, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding the business side of the value proposition component for you and your practice is such an important consideration that I would never let that slip. Have fun with this. Have fun with your value proposition in your practice and how that relates to you and your practice, your patients, your vision, who it is you want to be what for. And I think you'll find yourself much further ahead. You've got my email there. I'm happy to stay online. Des, if you've got some questions or anything that have come in, you're welcome to shoot those to me now. And I can certainly cover any of that off. I just got a text from Des. It says that the next Business Essentials, I apologize for this. This is what happens when you have a great course. The next date for Mastering Business Essentials is April 29th, 2021. So there's definitely been a deficiency for all of us learning business education and business management and understanding metrics and stuff like that. And Rich and Mark's class is going to be fantastic. So April 29th to May 1st, 2021. So if you're interested in doing something like that, let Desi know, or she can send out the information about that kind of a program. Any other questions or stuff like that, Des, you can text those to me. I guess you can use the Q&A for questions. So let me open up that particular thing. Looking up here, Q&A, got it. No open questions. That's outstanding. I'll stay on the line for a couple of seconds to see if something else pops up, but Good stuff. I enjoyed talking about this. It's kind of the fluffy side of dentistry again, but it's not really so fluffy because it helps us from a fluffy standpoint. It's the articulation of this clinical difference or the articulation of this business difference of how we run our practices and help our patients have better health. So it's always kind of fun. Also, if you want your team to see this webinar, this is going to be recorded, and Desi will send out the link for all of this tomorrow. It'll be on the cloud, so you'll be able to access this if you decide you want to use this for an office meeting. We tried to keep it to under 45 minutes so there'd be time for Q&A, and it could fit into a lunch hour for you. So we've been trying to condense that. Sometimes when somebody says you're doing an hour webinar, I talk for 59 minutes and 57 seconds, and I say, any questions? Okay, great, thanks. So it looks like everything's good. What is the first step to cut down some PPOs? Please advise. Well, thank you for that question. Just in time, I was just about to say no question. So, so the first step, that's a great question, and I love answering that question. So the first step to cutting down on PPOs is, first, you have to do some math. You have to break down how many patients do you have. Let's say it's 1,500. How many are in this PPO and this PPO and this PPO? Break those down. Then you take some very popular procedures like crowns and fillings and cleanings and exams and x-rays and things that you do routinely. And then you chart that out and you say, so what's the write-off we have on this? What's the write-off we have on this? Then you can see, here's your full fee. These aren't good numbers, but just making the math easy. My full fee is $1,000 for this crown. Great. This PPO pays $700. This PPO pays $800. This PPO pays $600. So now you can look at the differences and you can look at what percentage of your full fee do you get for each different PPO. That helps you decide which PPO you should target first, or which ones you should target first, second, and third, to maybe changing your relationship with. That's the first step, is you have to understand the math, how many patients. If it's 50 or 60 or 70% of your patients, it's going to be much, much harder to leave a PPO. If it's 10 or 20% of your patient population, you might find that if the write-offs are large, you might only have to keep 30 or 40 or 50 or 60% of that patient population in your practice after you go non-par with their PPO schedule to still come out ahead financially. Most of the time it's between 50 and 67% of the patient population in a PPO, but I have seen practices where the write-offs were nearly 50%. And at 50%, it wasn't even covering the overhead. So actually, if that doctor had said, no, I'm not taking any more of those PPO patients, I'm not going to see them anymore, they would make more money. They would be less busy, but they would make more money because they were actually taking money out of their pocket and handing it to that patient to do that crown. They wanted to keep their schedule full. They wanted to be busy, but it was costing them money out of their pocket to see that PPO patient. In that case, you could say goodbye right away. That's the first step, is understanding the math and doing an analysis. The second step is then building this value proposition conversation with those patients over the next 6 or 12 months, so that when you write them a letter and tell them in 6 more months you're going to be leaving that PPO, most of them will stay. So there's a very predictable way to be able to cut down on PPOs or remove yourself from some of those insurances. So the person that wrote that question, please email me individually, and I'll be happy to get on a call and talk you through some of that and help. So that's great. I'm going to count to 10. If there's any more questions, we'll answer those. If not, I'll bid you adieu and wish you a wonderful night and a great holiday season and all that. 9876543. You're welcome. 2-1. Thank you all very much, and hope you have a great holiday season. Thanks so much.